My name is Mabel. Last week, I faced a betrayal I never could have anticipated in my life. It struck me so hard that, in that moment, I felt my entire world turn upside down. Pain was so deep that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't rid myself of the ache and anger in my heart. But no matter what, I have to tell this story. 'Cause I want them to realize what they stole from me, or maybe in the end, I want to see who will truly lose. My grandmother always used to say to me, "One day you'll be the owner of this house, Mabel." It was such an innocent statement. But now I see how much of a deception those words were. My family had decided to steal everything that was left to me as an inheritance. They had devised such a simple yet ruthless plan that I could feel everything slipping through my fingers right before my eyes. Now I stood in that house, a house filled with memories in every corner. My grandmother's house. The house she'd told me when I was 12, "It will be yours." But everything had changed. The scent of lavender sachets still lingered in the air, the old lace doilies, the copper lamps. But now I was truly alone in this house. "We have to do this, Mabel," my mother said, her voice carrying that innocent yet deeply emotionless tone again. For a moment, something inside me exploded. How cold she was. Every move she made was calculated. From that moment on, I realized it was all over. My eyes drifted to the key in my mother's hand. That key, the one my grandmother had given me saying, "The house will be yours," was now in my mother's grasp, nothing more than a tool for a sale document. "The house needs too many repairs, Mabel," my mother said, taking a sip of tea in that pretentious way of hers. "Are you planning to live here? How will you manage? This burden isn't yours to bear." And in that moment, I realized it was all a lie. It was so clear. My mother and father had already planned to sell the house. And I, in my complete naivety, had thought it would still belong to me. "This house cannot be sold," I said, my voice trembling. "Grandma gave it to me. You can't do this." My mother's gaze froze for a moment, then softened as she continued with calm determination. "We're doing this for your own good, Mabel. The market value is very high. You wouldn't be able to handle the maintenance and expenses anyway. We're lightening your load." "But how?" "Lightening my load?" To my mother and father, this house was just a piece of property, but to me it was a past. A life and my grandmother's memories. Everything they were telling me now, none of it was real. I had to accept that. My brother Riley, that quiet, indifferent man, just stood in the corner saying nothing. His stance said it all. The only thing my family felt toward me was apathy. And I felt a void in my heart, deep and painful. "You're saying it's sold?" I asked, my voice fading. "Really?" My mother nodded coolly, as if it were nothing. "Yes, the house is sold, Mabel. It's no longer yours. It's not just a house. We're doing something better for you. We found a good buyer, got a great offer." To me, it felt like nothing more than a cold transaction. There was no emotion, just material value. But I had never seen the indifference in my mother's eyes so clearly before. "I can't accept this," I said, my voice shaking. "I won't let this house be sold. Grandma left it to me. Don't you remember the will?" "Yes, we read the will," my mother said, her eyes darting away. "But it's not for you. We're protecting you from this burden, Mabel. We'll decide for you." I couldn't accept that. Everything inside me erupted at once. "You can't do this," I shouted. "Grandma left this to me. You can't take it." My whole body was trembling, the rage inside me on the verge of exploding. I realized how distant my mother and father had become, how they were willing to sell everything and take it from me for their own gain. This wasn't just a house, it was my past. My mother looked away, smiling coldly. "This is for your own good, Mabel. Just for your own good." And in that moment, I made a decision. No matter what it takes, I will take back this house, the legacy my grandmother left me. I'll show them. This is only the beginning. That night, everything in the house was so quiet that I almost didn't want to breathe. Felt like some kind of curse. Every step, every movement brought me closer to that cold, ruthless reality. My family had somehow taken everything that was left to me as an inheritance without even blinking. The house, my grandmother's belongings, the memories, everything had been sold. I spent the whole night sleepless. As I tossed and turned in bed, one thought consumed my mind. I could never accept this. I could never have imagined such a betrayal in my life. I couldn't believe they could be so cruel as to leave me alone and steal everything for their own gain. But it was all laid bare before me. The one thing they didn't understand was this: underestimating me and erasing me wouldn't gain them anything. There was a strength inside me, and I was determined to discover it. The next morning, at the breakfast table, my mother and father were cheerful, celebrating the sale. My brother Sullivan, as usual, was indifferent, but this time his gaze was sharper, more attentive. It was as if he was aware of everything but chose to stay silent. In that moment, a wave of anger surged in my heart. I had to stop them from doing this. No matter what, I had to find a way. "Is the house sold?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother, as always, looked at me with that patient but hollow smile and replied, "Yes, sweetheart. Sold. This is for your own good," she said. The coldness in her voice only provoked me more. "It's what's right for everyone." "What's right?" I said, clenching my jaw. "You're celebrating the sale? Really? You're celebrating after taking everything from me?" For a fleeting moment, fear flashed in my mother's eyes. But she quickly recovered, putting her mask back on. "We did this for your own good, Mabel. Besides, the sale is already finalized. The house belongs to its new owners now." Those words ignited the cold, deep rage inside me. "I won't let it be sold," I said, my fingers slamming hard against the edge of the table. "And I won't let this go. I'll take back everything Grandma gave me. This isn't the end of it." My mother peered at me from beneath her brows. "Mabel, calm down. This is our decision. It's all for your own good, to free you from this burden. We know what's best for you. How do you think you're protecting me by doing this?" I said, taking a deep breath. "The house may be sold, but I'm still standing up for what's right. For me, this isn't over. It will never be over." For a moment, my mother fell silent. I didn't know what she felt in that instant, but a flicker of fear appeared in her eyes. I felt like I'd lost myself. I was so angry that I didn't know what to do. But one thing I did know: I had to find a way. Accepting this, witnessing their quiet surrender, and recognizing the rot within them, it was so much worse. That house was mine. That inheritance was mine. That evening, a plan began to take shape in my mind. A few weeks earlier, my grandmother had left me an old envelope. Inside it were written instructions she'd left for me. I'd read her will before, but this time I needed to look at it with fresh eyes. That envelope might hold the key to my life. The first light of morning, I took the envelope in my hands. I carefully examined the papers inside. Every note, every line could point me toward the right path. In that moment, I fully understood what my grandmother had meant. "Sometimes the greatest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages," she'd said. Yes, she was right. They made it seem like they were doing me a favor, but in reality, what they were doing was erasing me. For a brief moment, I felt the true power of the will inside that envelope. In that instant, my anger gave way to determination. I had to do something. And so that early morning, I decided to go to a lawyer. I had to do everything I could to reverse the sale. This inheritance wasn't just a house, it was a symbol of my grandmother's life and love. Every room, every corner of that house reminded me of her. This wasn't just my right, it was the legacy she'd left me. But this fight wouldn't be easy. The sale was already complete. Yet I was Mabel and I would never give up. That morning, everything in the house seemed as normal as it had been before. But I wasn't normal. There was a spark inside me, a kind of restlessness, as if I were on the verge of falling into a trap where everyone was watching me. Before facing my family, I prepared myself to visit the lawyer. I was so determined that my steps felt certain, as if they were leading me somewhere. I took my grandmother's old yellowed papers filled with her handwriting and slipped them into my coat pocket. I held the envelope with trembling hands. That envelope was where it all began. If I could decipher it correctly, maybe, just maybe, I could stop them in the end. The letters my grandmother had written to me shone like guiding stars. Her legacy wasn't just a house. Every line held a lesson. I had learned what she had learned in life. Back then, everything came at a price, and I was ready to pay it all. When I arrived at the lawyer's office, I saw the same cold, serious man I'd known for years. Attorney Spencer treated everything in life like a business transaction. To him, people were just files. But this time, I didn't want to be just another file. This time, I was there to claim the inheritance my grandmother had left me. As I entered the room, Spencer gave me a brief glance before turning back to his computer. "Mabel, it's been a while." "What do you want me to do?" he said in a calm voice. "Can you review my grandmother's will again?" I asked, thinking the colder my tone, the better. Especially the part about the house. Spencer looked up and adjusted his glasses. "Yes, I remember. That house was left in your name. But the sale process has already been completed, Mabel. Taking it back now is impossible. I had expected this. But giving up wasn't an option. Isn't there any way to reverse the sale?" I asked, keeping my expression steady. "Legally, the sale is finalized. The new owners have already completed the paperwork. However," he paused for a moment, "if you want to cancel the sale, you'd need the new owner's consent. But in that case, it would spark a major legal battle." A legal battle? That meant going to war with my family. But I had no other choice left. The only legacy my grandmother had left me wasn't the disappointments and pains of the past. It was the strength she had offered me. I had to embrace that strength now. "Yes, start it," I said. "No matter the cost, I won't stop until that house is restored to its original state." Spencer looked at me, surprised, and nodded. "You're taking a very bold step, Mabel. But if you succeed, it'll be a significant victory for you." For a moment, Spencer's words gave me a flicker of confidence. But then a single thought dominated my mind. I had to succeed. There was no stopping now. As the lawyer began preparing the necessary documents, I pictured every detail of that house in my mind. The old stone walls, my grandmother's antique furniture, the rooms filled with the delicate scent of lavender, all of it reminded me of life. But something was still missing, my family. A week later, when the legal process began, I noticed how quickly everything was unfolding. No matter how much they insisted the sale was final, I had provided everything needed to reopen the case. The lawyer was arranging a series of documents to seek the new owner's permission. I knew my family wouldn't give up so easily. But this time, I'd hold them accountable in a different way. The house had been sold, but the house in my heart was still mine. There was no wall standing in front of me anymore. It had all become an open game. That evening, I returned to my family. My mother, father, and Riley were gathered in the living room. They were as calm and composed as ever, but a storm was raging inside me. I walked toward them, wasting no time, and got straight to the point. "The house is still mine and it will be taken back," I said. "The sale will be canceled. My grandmother's legacy can't be sold to anyone." My mother's face went pale. My father narrowed his eyes at me, but this time there was a hint of worry in his expression. "Mabel, we did what was right for you. You're old enough to understand that now." "You're wrong," I said, each word sharp as a blade. "You're wrong because you think you're justified. But that house was the beginning of everything. And I'm determined to fight for it." That moment, Riley stepped into the room. His eyes held a different expression as he looked at me, something unfamiliar. He stayed silent. I could sense he'd realized something. "What's going on?" he asked, but this time it wasn't a real question, just a tone of indifference. "Listen to me," I said, taking a step forward. "I'll never accept this. I promise you everything will be taken back." And in that moment, I felt the strongest I'd ever been in my life. I had embraced my own power and realized it was time for everything to start anew. That evening, the atmosphere in the house had completely shifted. I could feel how much everything had deepened. For the first time, when I looked at my family, they seemed utterly estranged. My mother, my father, and Riley, each of them had transformed into someone else. In that moment, the only thing they felt toward me was hatred. To them, I was a threat. In my mind, they knew full well that I would come out victorious in the end. But no matter what, I would show them what they deserved. That house was my grandmother's house. I had to protect her memories because they were my memories too. It all boiled down to one word: betrayal. And they would pay the price for that betrayal. I spent that night reviewing my plan, thinking through every step of how I would proceed. I would meet with attorney Spencer again. That house belonged to me alone. Yes, my family was powerful, but I was stronger. 'Cause within me burned a desire for vengeance for everything I had lost. That morning felt like the perfect time to begin. I went to the lawyer. I told Spencer exactly what I needed him to do with absolute clarity. The case was moving forward, but the new owners still refused to relinquish the sale. I had to find a way to reach them. I had to find a way out. Spencer approached me and handed me a file. "Yes, Mabel," he said seriously. "Everything you need to reverse the sale is in here. But I warn you, you'll need to be careful when negotiating with the new owners. They might be stronger than you." Hearing that only pushed my anger one step further. Stronger than me? No one could make them stronger. "Make sure they take me seriously," I said with unwavering resolve. That evening, I walked in the park outside the house. The darkness of the night was beginning to settle, and silence enveloped everything around me. But that silence made me feel the storm raging inside. In that moment, it was the perfect time to do something about what my mother and father had done. The pain, the hatred, the thirst for revenge, I felt them all more intensely than ever. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Spencer. "Your grandmother's legacy is at an impasse," he said. The worry in his voice was more pronounced than usual. "The new owners are sticking to the sale. But they found something inside the house. A lost collection, something valuable. This could complicate things significantly." Each word hit me like a blow to the chest. What did he mean? What did they find? I asked, my voice trembling. "Some of the old books in the house are missing, but they're said to be very valuable." "If we can find those books," he said, pausing for a moment. Something inside me jolted. "Those books? No, those were my grandmother's most precious possessions," I said, barely believing my own words. Those books weren't just a piece of the past. They held my grandmother's deepest, most hidden secrets, secrets no one else knew. I had to find them. "We need to investigate this immediately," I said urgently. The next morning, I met with Spencer. He suggested a plan to locate the missing books. I don't know where those books disappeared to, but if we look in the right place, he said, maybe everything can fall into place. The unease behind his words gave me no comfort. Suddenly, something Spencer had read in an old magazine caught my attention. This is an article about your grandmother's lost books. It says someone considered selling them to a collector. In an instant, my world came crashing down. Those books were the works my grandmother had kept hidden from me for years, filled with secrets. And now, someone was thinking of selling them. They weren't just items of high monetary value. They were the key to my past. And that key couldn't be sold to anyone else. I understood my mother and father's actions even more clearly now. They hadn't just sold the house, they'd sold my past. I'll take it back from them, I said to myself. My voice echoed with dark fury. That day, I resolved to find a way to contact the new owners. No matter what it took, I would find those missing books and exact my revenge for everything. I began reaching out to the homeowner. My voice on the phone was cold, almost devoid of emotion. I want my grandmother's books back, I said, cutting straight to the point. Yes, there was a collection in the house. That collection belongs to me. If you don't return it, things will get very difficult for you. There was a tense silence. Then, the man on the other end took a deep breath. What do you want, Mabel? This is legally complicated. But if you really want your grandmother's books, he began, offering a condition. We can make a deal. But if you don't give me everything I ask for, this could turn into a much bigger war. In that moment, a slow, simmering anger overtook me. A war, you say? I replied, my voice now carrying a chilling hardness. Then you found someone to fight. After hanging up the phone, my heart began to pound rapidly. The war had begun. But this war couldn't have just one side. I would either win or I would lose everything. Those books weren't just a legacy from the past. They were the most valuable things that would also determine my future. And getting them back was more important than anything else. When Attorney Spencer told me I needed to follow up, instead of feeling the relief of having found the person I was looking for, there was only an emptiness inside me. I remembered those days spent in my grandmother's old house. The warm summer evenings, the things my mother and father had told me. All of it felt like a lie now. My family, unbeknownst to me, had been steeped in a deep betrayal, chasing some kind of selfish gain. While Spencer prepared for the meeting I needed to have with the new owners, I focused on a new plan of my own. To make this war official, I first had to find those missing books. They were the most valuable pieces of my grandmother's legacy. As she had always taught me, some secrets should remain secrets. But this time, I would bring those secrets to light. That evening, I obtained the address of the house's new owners. They were collectors. First glance, it was clear they belonged to a very elite circle. But they didn't seem trustworthy to me at all. How attached could a collector truly be to something? They were only after profit. As the night deepened, I walked through the quiet streets. The elegant exterior of their house hid the dark secrets within. With every step, the fear in my heart grew stronger. Those books, if I couldn't find them, I would lose the only thing my grandmother had left me. When I reached the door, I took a deep breath and knocked. The sounds coming from inside made me hesitate at first. But I was determined. If I was going to face them, I knew I couldn't be afraid. The door opened slowly, and I saw the man standing before me. As my eyes quickly scanned him, I noticed something immediately. This wasn't an ordinary collector. There was something else in him, some other reckoning. I couldn't tell right away if he recognized me, but his cold gaze made me feel like everything was turning into a trap. "I'm Mabel," I said, my voice slow but sharp. "I'm here about my grandmother's books. Those books belong to me and I want them back. The man looked at me, a smile flickering across his face. That smile, like the hidden venom in a snake's skin, was far from reassuring. I know. The books are indeed valuable. But it's not a simple matter. You won't be able to take them as easily as you think, Mabel, he said. If you'd like, we can make a deal. A surge of anger erupted inside me. What kind of deal? He opened the door fully and gestured for me to come inside. Let's go in. If you agree to our terms, you can have the books back. But there's a price you'll need to pay. Everything had a price, and I was ready to pay it. As I stepped inside, the luxury and ostentation of the house momentarily overwhelmed me. But it was just a facade. Those books were the real treasure. The true threat was the people trying to take them from me. After watching me enter, the man closed the door. These, he said, pointing to the books. We know they're valuable, but there's something even more valuable to us. If you don't give us that, these books, everything stays as it is. Was he mocking me? What's more valuable to you? I asked coldly. Without taking his eyes off me, he tilted his head slightly. Your grandmother had a secret, didn't she? Those books may be important to you, but the information they contain is far more valuable to us. What do you say? If you accept our terms, you can have your books back. Everything in my mind froze. I had been searching for a secret in those books that my grandmother had never told me. Could she really have been hiding something? I didn't know what that secret was, but the eerie confidence in the man's voice whispered that nothing was normal. In the heavy silence, I locked eyes with him and responded. You think you're playing with me, but you need to understand this. Those books are coming back to me. No matter what. With a cunning smile on his face, he said, Everything has a price, Mabel. Are you willing to pay it? His words only fueled the anger in my heart further. They wanted to take everything from me, but I would take everything back from them. In that moment, the sudden pause in everything only intensified the tension and anger within me. Though the man's words sounded like a threat, I had to understand what it was he held in his hands. The secrets my grandmother had hidden weren't confined to just the books. They were the true legacy. And I had to take that legacy back. The man's voice was cold and chilling. Your grandmother did something to protect you, didn't she? He said. Something very valuable to us. And that secret isn't just in those books, it's in many other records too. So, you know what we need to do. My eyes were locked on him, but my face remained expressionless. This war is going to be much bigger, I thought. The books were just the beginning. This wasn't just a transaction, it was a fight for identity. Just as my family had abandoned me, my grandmother had somehow aimed to strip me of all traces of the past. What secrets? I asked, my lips trembling. What secrets was he talking about? Why were they going to such lengths? Was it really just about a book? The man suddenly approached me with a calm demeanor, taking a few steps closer. He spoke slowly. Your grandmother wasn't just a collector, she was a historian. Those books aren't merely valuable pieces. They hold the secrets of an ancient family, a dynasty. They contain hidden knowledge about the lands you own. Which family, which era's secret chords. These could be the world's most priceless treasures. A heavy silence spread through the room. The books weren't just old pages after all. They were a historical key carrying the deepest traces of the past. Each one was a door opening to a world full of secrets. And now that door had been placed before me. Why did you hide this from me? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Isn't this my right? The man looked deep into my eyes and replied, Yes, of course. But secrets aren't just things you possess, Mabel. Some secrets elevate you. Others destroy you. Those books, if not used correctly, could tear you apart. His words crushed my heart. Destroy you, he said. These books were my past. But he wanted to claim them for his own gain. They weren't just fragments of old letters strung together. They were symbols of the path my grandmother had walked, the decisions she had made. In that moment, in that dark room, it was just me. No matter how luxurious the surroundings, the paintings on the walls, the antique furniture, they couldn't suppress the pain inside me. Everything he said about their immense value became less meaningful with each passing second. Now, there was only one thing that mattered to me. Those books had to be reclaimed. And no matter the cost, those secrets had to be uncovered. I'm not interested in making a deal right now, I said firmly. Give me back my books, or I'll take them another way. A flicker of uncertainty crossed the man's face. But then that cunning smile returned. It might be too late for that, he said. Your grandmother, she was the owner of both the past and this legacy. But she lost everything long ago, and we're taking a step to make up for that loss. I couldn't fully grasp what he meant, but with every passing minute, a deeper fear grew inside me. What do you mean? I asked, my voice hardening. The man slipped his hands into his pockets and pulled out a piece of paper. He placed it slowly in front of me. It was a copy of a very old document. Your grandmother left a will about who would hold this collection, Mabel. Those books might seem like just a record to you, but in reality, they're part of a much larger agreement. I slowly picked up the paper and read it with my own eyes. There was a signature that seemed to be my grandmother's, but every word, every letter, every sentence, it chilled me to the core. The books didn't belong solely to me. It was written like a contract. How did you hide this? I asked, my lips trembling. Had my grandmother really written this? The man simply smiled. Sometimes the greatest secrets come from the most unexpected places, he said. And your claim to this legacy was a misunderstanding. Those books weren't about you. A misunderstanding. That sentence was enough to illuminate all the darkness within me. The books hadn't been written for me. My grandmother had left them to someone else. And in that moment, I began to understand what true betrayal really was. My family hadn't just tried to steal my inheritance. My grandmother had left me alone in this game too. My words caught in my throat. You deceived me, I said with resolve. But now, I will win. The man widened his cold smile. If that's what you want, Mabel, he said. But remember, learning some secrets can destroy you. The man's cold smile echoed in my mind. His words kept spinning in my head. Learning some secrets can destroy you. Inside, I said, I'll never let that happen, but my voice wasn't as certain as I wanted it to be. I was torn about what to do. The books had to come back to me, but how? The paper in the man's hand was like a harbinger of destruction. For a while, I stared at him in silence. In that moment, I could feel, almost like a ghost, how terribly wrong everything had gone. Was the only thing my grandmother would leave me a piece of paper and the darkened traces of a series of secrets? My family would have to pay the price for the betrayal they'd been weaving for so long. But what about me? What would become of me? What do you know about my grandmother's secret? I said, now so determined that my voice seemed to assert itself. The man brought the paper closer to his chest, never taking his eyes off me. It doesn't matter, he said slowly. Those books could drag you to your death. To my death? I asked, stunned. Would you go that far? Over just a book? When his eyes met mine fully, there was a fleeting shift in them. In that instant, I understood fear better than ever. There was indeed a massive secret at play here. The books were only the beginning. Every line, every parenthesis, every sentence within them held the power to change a life forever. There was a past my grandmother had lived through, one she'd never told me about and never wanted me to discover. I took a step back, uncertain. I can take back the books and the secret, but what will the cost be? The man pulled his hand from his pocket and extended an envelope toward me. This is our final offer, Mabel. The books can be returned to you, but on one condition. As he placed the envelope in my hand, that chilling confidence gleamed in his eyes again. I opened it and looked at the copy of the document inside. What is this? I asked, my lips dry. It's the text of a contract your grandmother made for a portion of this. You'll see that, along with the books you're aware of, there's something else involved. This is your inheritance and your past. But it comes with a condition that will change everything. I began reading the text inside the envelope. With every line, I could feel my grandmother's path more deeply. The document seemed like a decree determining that the inheritance belonged to just one person. And that person wasn't me. The final lines made everything even darker. Why did you hide this from me? I asked, looking into the man's eyes. Are these things inside the books? The man stepped back, and instead of smiling, he responded almost harshly. Yes, they're connected to the books. But I must warn you, digging this deep will absolutely destroy you. Those books don't just shape the past, they can shape the future too. Either you accept this, or you're left with nothing. A storm erupted within me. I was chasing so much. The books and the inheritance stood before me like the edge of ruin. Yet there was something more. In the end, my grandmother had left me my true legacy. The books were just a symbol. My real inheritance was uncovering a lost truth and making my family pay for this horrific betrayal. I'll make the deal, I said resolutely. The man looked at me with a strange glint in his eyes. You should know what you're losing by doing this. The books are only the beginning. The hatred in my eyes sharpened with every passing moment. The beginning? Let's see about that, I said. To reach the real end, we need to start. I remember that night. As I walked back home, I formulated a plan with every step. The man's words, each sentence cutting like a knife, echoed in my memory. As I drew closer to the things my grandmother had hidden, I began to realize how deep those secrets ran. The books were just the first key. That key would unlock the dark doors of the past and guide me to my grandmother's lost legacy. When I woke up the next morning, my first task was to find those old books. Setting the document and envelopes aside, I started calculating everything. But soon I realized, everything now carried a greater danger. Retrieving the books wouldn't just alter the past, it would change the future too. My family should have fought this war with them, not with me. Hours later, I set out toward that house again to meet the man. Today would be a turning point. It would either be the end of everything or a grand beginning. As I passed through the door, a storm of thoughts raged within me. Today, everything would change. My steps were leading me down an irreversible path. For a moment, I paused and took a deep breath. What would I do? I couldn't trust anyone. This was a game, but this time I would make the final move. When I pushed the door open and stepped inside, I noticed something different. The air felt heavier, darker. My eyes quickly scanned every detail of the house. The antique furniture, the old paintings, the cracks in the walls. But the most frightening part was all the emptiness. This house had once been filled with the presence of the person it belonged to. Now, only the echoes of a past lingered within these dark walls. The man was waiting for me in the same room again. I approached him slowly, never taking my eyes off him. "Are you ready?" he said, his cold voice devoid of any warmth. "Yes," I replied, my determination evident in every word. But I was aware of the moment I was in. This wasn't just a meeting, it was the beginning of a war. And in this war, I had to be the victor. The man pulled a file from his pocket and placed it in front of us. "This is your final offer," he said. "Your grandmother's books and her secret can be returned to you. But there's a condition." "What condition?" I asked, feeling each word heighten my unease. He took a deep breath and spread the papers out before me. "Nothing comes without a cost for you. And this legacy, it's not just about the books. Those secrets could pull you into a great power, but they could also destroy you. So here's my question, which side are you on?" My eyes locked onto his face, innocent yet threatening at the same time. As I tried to figure out what to do, my grandmother's words echoed in my mind once more. "Sometimes the greatest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages, my dear." Now I realized just how true that was. My family had kept me in a game for years. But now that game was over. "You know which side I'm on," I said. For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. But then that familiar smile returned. "Understood," he said. "Then prepare to take the final step." There was a calculation behind everything. I would get my books back, but the real question was the price of reclaiming them. He pulled a document from the file. "If you accept this, everything will come at a cost," he said. "There's a contract here stating that your grandmother made a deal for everything you own. You need to sign this document. Everything had a price." The text on the contract was so small and intricate it strained my eyes. But one sentence caught my attention. "This legacy lives only in one person's heart, and that person must bear the burden of the past." In that moment, something inside me broke. Past always followed us, and I had to carry it. "What price?" I asked, hesitating. He pushed the file forward. "You'll reshape not just the past and the future, but your own life too. What those books bring you will make you not only powerful but dangerous. Everything will change. You'll lose your family, and then you'll face your past. But remember, no one can save you." They were just words, but at the same time, they terrified me. There was no one to save me. I was so alone that I could only rely on myself. I had to do this. I reached for the file and paused to think one last time before signing. My books were everything to me. My grandmother hadn't just left me a past, she'd left me a way of life. But perhaps everything I'd once had was a deception. Everything I'd learned about my family had brought me more betrayal with each passing day. I signed. The moment I put my signature on the paper, the air in the room shifted. It was as if something silently vanished. But at the same time, something else was being born. A glint flashed in the man's eyes. "I was expecting this," he said with a faint smile. "Now we've reached the end of everything." And in that moment, the old paintings on the walls seemed to glow differently. The voices in my mind swirled chaotically. All the books had begun to unravel their mystery. The moment when the past and future would merge was now very near. When I signed the document, the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. It was as if the air grew heavier, and every breath felt like it might choke me. The legacy my grandmother had left me suddenly transformed into an even greater burden. There was no turning back now. The final lines of that document echoed in my mind like a ringing bell. To bear the burden of the past. What did that mean? Was my past really that heavy? The man picked up the file and carefully slipped it into his pocket. That strange, dark glint still lingered in his eyes. "Now the next step," he said, but his voice, like a dark wind guiding me through a labyrinth, trailed off. "Are you truly ready, Mabel? This choice will take you to the very end." I couldn't respond. My mouth was dry, my tongue frozen. My eyes drifted back to my past for a moment. My grandmother's words, the ones she'd always said to me, "Sometimes the greatest betrayals come wrapped in the prettiest packages," felt more meaningful now. My family had always spoken words of reassurance, but every one of them had been nothing more than a lie. I used to say, my family will always have my back. But now they were my enemies. The man's voice cut through my thoughts. To get the books back, you need to take a step first. If you're truly ready, then you must accept the truth within you. Your grandmother's decision to leave everything to you was only meant to help you truly know yourself. Truly know myself? I asked, my voice trembling. What do you mean? His smile widened, but the coldness within it remained. It's time to pay the price for what your grandmother did in her life. Those books, they'll open every door. But they'll also force you to face your past. Taking them back might not just destroy you, it could be the ruin of your entire family. Are you ready? My whole body tensed. Yes, I had come this far. Taking back the books, uncovering the past and the truth, felt like getting lost in darkness. But there was something else. This would be my last chance. I would either accept the past or nothing would matter anymore. The books offered me not just my grandmother's life and secret, but the chance to rewrite my own life. But what would the cost of that chance be? Suddenly, the ticking of the old wall clock in the corner stopped. Time itself seemed to freeze. Everything grew unbearably heavy. How long could I endure carrying such a massive responsibility? Where can I find the books? I asked, my voice laced with uncertainty. Was I truly ready? The man looked into my eyes carefully, then shrugged. It's your choice, he said coldly. But be careful, this path will change you. Facing your past won't end with just taking the books. That secret will pull you in. I nodded, the determination in my eyes feeling foreign even to me. I had reached the end of everything. Reaching my grandmother's hidden life, the secret she'd kept for years. For me, this was a chance, but also an ending. I'm ready, I said, my words trembling. The man took a deep breath and pointed to an old cabinet in the corner of the room. Then take them. But remember, once you take this step, there's no going back. I quickly moved toward the cabinet. My hands were sweaty, my heart pounding. I was chasing so much that I could no longer tell what was right or wrong. Taking the books would be the most important moment of my life. But everything I encountered was pulling me deeper. The fear of the past was still closing in on me. How close? I didn't know. I opened the cabinet door. Inside were old, dusty books with worn pages. The books were really there. For a moment, I thought everything had fallen into place. But each book seemed to draw me in. Each one showed me a different face. Which one should I take? My eyes caught on one book. A book bearing my grandmother's signature. It stood out from the rest. This, I whispered. I reached out and took it. In that instant, it felt as if a weight lifted from me. But there was something else too. I could sense that the secret within this book would bring me both freedom and disaster. The book in my hand was a harbinger of immense power. My grandmother's secret had somehow reached me. But revealing that secret would be something no one wanted. In that moment, the dark thoughts within me grew clearer. This was just a beginning. My grandmother's mysterious life, the secrets of the past, and who I was, they were just pieces. Truth would be far darker. Holding the book tightly, I looked up. The man noticed the resolve in my eyes. You did it, Mabel, he said. Now you'll have to carry all this truth. That secret will slowly consume you. There's no turning back. I took a step forward. This path was now mine alone. The thin line between past and future had vanished in an instant. The books would unveil the secrets, but perhaps some secrets were never meant to see the light of day. The book grew heavy in my hands. Each page spilled the stones of the past. Learning its secrets was pulling me into an entirely different world. But what those secrets offered me wasn't a victory easily won. This book wasn't just a few pages, it was a reflection of a profound loss. Something was slipping away, perhaps my humanity. The man moved silently behind me and sat in the corner of the room. He said nothing. In his eyes, there was the ease of someone who had seen through every lie. Was he the one who had brought me to this point? I didn't know. But whatever the case, there was no turning back now. As my eyes focused on the book, my grandmother's handwritten lines drew me in. On the first page, there was a note in her handwriting. Whoever seeks the truth will, with just one step, find no way back. Learning the secret is only possible for someone who can accept it. In that moment, I slowly lifted my head. I could feel that I was beginning to uncover the secret. But it wasn't just a burden I had to cling to, it was like a spell that was tearing me apart. Taking the books, carrying the weight of the past on my shoulders, meant facing the dark truth that everything presented to me. The man's eyes watched me with a smile seeping from within. "Now, think about what you really want to learn," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Once you start learning it, there's no turning back. Everything changes." Ignoring his words, I turned to the second page of the book. This was just the beginning. Each line held dark truths about my grandmother's life. Slowly, my eyes got lost in the pages, every word growing sharper. Over time, the silhouettes of old events began to reveal themselves in a complex web. And something inside me started sliding toward a great collapse. "Mabel," the man said, the seriousness in his voice now terrifying. "Reading the books doesn't just uncover old secrets. It also means letting those secrets embrace you." For a moment, something inside me snapped. Just a minute ago, I had begun unraveling the information from the books. But each new piece of knowledge peeled away another layer. I couldn't go back. What door had I opened? Where was I? The books weren't just revealing my grandmother's mysterious life. They were exposing dark, horrifying secrets about my family. I lifted my eyes from the book and looked at the man's face. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. What was he really telling me? The man stood up slowly and stepped forward. "The truth is waiting for you," he said, but the cold, threatening demeanor was gone. In its place was an ominous kind of calm. "The truth can kill you, Mabel. You know that, don't you?" I quickly closed the book, my hands trembling. Something inside me was screaming loudly. "Come on, stop it already!" I didn't know what kind of game I was playing. But one thing seemed certain. There was no end to this anymore. The darkness ran even deeper. The man took another step, cornering me further. "Accept it. Everything you need to learn about your family is here. That book is a weapon designed to trap them all in one snare. But there's one difference. That weapon will make you so dark that no one will recognize you." Fear enveloped me completely. A weapon? In that moment, I realized everything was a trap. My grandmother and my family had always worked to give me the most valuable thing. But I was just a piece of a grand mystery. I couldn't understand. Was the burden my grandmother left me meant to destroy everything? Suddenly, a line from the document flashed before my eyes again. "Whoever decides to learn the truth will pay a price. Then everything will lead to ruin." Now I would have to pay that price. Everything crumbled suddenly and sharply. The book in my hands was more than a burden. Each page felt as though it had been written to destroy my future. The darkness in my eyes deepened with every moment, growing like an intensifying threat. As I lifted the stones of the past, I found a deeper abyss beneath each one. The man stood right in front of me. He was so close I could hear his breathing. In his eyes, there was a reflection of darkness, but his face held only expectation. I dared to take another step forward. "What do you need to tell me?" I asked, my voice nearly reduced to a whisper. He locked his eyes on mine and fell silent for a moment. Then, as if he had calculated this entire scene beforehand, an unsettling smile crept across his face. You have to learn this, Mabel. Do you really think you know your family? His words crashed over me like a harsh reality. What did he mean? I was already on the verge of uncovering the greatest truth. Everything should belong to me, shouldn't it? But doubts were growing within me. With every line in the book, I discovered more. Each new piece of information made me feel increasingly like a stranger. I realized I didn't truly know anyone. Then tell me the truth, I said, my eyes fixed on the book. What kind of truth are you hiding? What are you preparing me for? The man tilted his head slightly. The truth won't leave you alone, Mabel. After reading those books, you'll end up alone in the end. You'll fight only for yourself. And the people you thought loved you will vanish at the end of that dark path. All of them, they all lied. These were words from someone who supposedly wanted me to understand my family. In that moment, I thought everything was falling into place. My grandmother had wanted to tell me how dangerous everything was and reveal truths about my family I'd never known. But her decision to leave it to me was now exacting a heavy toll. Suddenly, everything changed. The darkness in my eyes spread through my body. A small spark within me turned into a raging fire. I can't do this. I can't accept this. Then I began to understand what price I was truly paying. What was keeping me here? So, I don't even know my own family, do I? I asked. My voice still trembled, but it was growing harder. The anger within me was now part of everything I'd been through. The man closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Sometimes the truth is something we don't want to see, he said. But the truths you're seeing now will mark the beginning of your destruction. There's a reason for all this ruin, Mabel. Everything sped up in an instant. The books, every line within them made the truth increasingly unbearable. My family. I realized I could no longer love them. No matter how much they growled, the darkness within them overshadowed everything. Suddenly, the man's words echoed in my mind again. There will be a price. What did that mean? What price was I paying? As each page of the book unveiled the secrets of the past, it was as if all the light in the world began to fade. The book and I now felt like a single entity. We were just a shadow. What should I do? I asked, surprising even myself. What should I really do? The man's smile spread with a cold, hidden triumph. The more you want to know, the deeper you'll fall into a dead end. But it's your decision. Just remember, nothing stays hidden forever. Something exploded. The order within me began to collapse. That ruin could crash down on me at any moment, but I was already starting to get lost in it. Everyone had lied to me. Slowly, I lifted my head, the resolve in my eyes sharpening. The emptiness in the man's gaze was dragging me down a dark path, but I couldn't stop. Stopping would mean accepting this entire secret. I couldn't stop. The final page of the book might hold the secret that would completely destroy me. But there was one thing. If I didn't take that step, I wouldn't be able to recognize anyone. I had to make a choice now. Either learn the truth or abandon this entire life. But making that choice wouldn't just be an end for me, it would be an end for my family too. Everything sharpened in an instant. Reading the books, uncovering the truth, every page, every word seemed to tell me that an end was approaching. Pure, growing rage burned within me. That rage could only be cooled by revenge. What had my family done to me? How had they played games with me all these years? Under the man's cold gaze, I thought everything belonged to me. No one could deceive me. Yes, the books might be revealing the truth, but I wouldn't let those truths crush me. My family had taken everything from me, everything. But now it was their turn. Then I muttered, letting the anger within me spill into words. I'll show them. I'll show them all. The man sensed something as he watched the book in front of me. In that moment, I made a decision. I would take revenge. But this wouldn't just be revenge, it would be a test, one that would teach them the most terrifying lesson of their lives. It was so profound that none of them would dare to turn back. The books my grandmother had left me felt like a weapon. Using them gave me power. Yet, at the same time, amidst all this rage, I didn't fully know where this decision would lead me. But one thing was certain. I felt nothing for the family that had deceived me for years, dragging me into their games. Now I had only one goal, and that goal was to make them pay. The key my grandmother had given me wasn't just a key, it was a door. There was no turning back once I passed through it. And now the time had come to pursue the truth. As time passed, I drifted further from my family. Being around them now seemed far too dangerous. Every moment I would question them, unearth their old secrets, and expose their dark faces. But time was running out. One morning I picked up the book again. This time I read it with eyes seeking revenge. Each page propelled me forward another step. As I read my grandmother's notes, I discovered a power behind her mysterious life, a power that could be lost to someone like me. In my last conversation with the man, he had only offered to help. "You'll have to pay the price for doing this," he said. "But if your choice is right, everything will end. And your revenge will always come at a high cost." I simply nodded. 'Cause no matter how high the cost, I would take my revenge. One day, the time came to confront my family. A dinner invitation, an echo of the old routine. In the luxurious living room of their house, I thought it was the right moment to return. There was no need to look back. I was now taking my final step against the people who had lied to me for years, who had tried to expend me at every opportunity. My mother, my father, my brother, they were all seated in their places. On every face, there was doubt and worry at my arrival. But now they were aware of something. They had expected me to stay silent for years, but I'd been quiet long enough. In that moment, I asked them a question. "Do you really know me?" A brief silence followed. Then my mother, trying to hide the fear on her face, responded, "Mabel, why all these drastic changes? We've always protected you, we love you." But I noticed that silence. In that moment, the fear within them pierced through all the walls. "You've always protected me," I said. "But you forgot one thing. That protection imprisoned me. Instead of letting me see the truth, you always shielded me." Slowly, my eyes roamed around the table. The war was about to begin. Then I took a step forward. I opened my bag. I revealed the legacy my grandmother had left me. In that moment, that mysterious inheritance marked the beginning of the end for my family. I placed the books on the table slowly. The rage in my eyes seemed to leap out and devour them all. "My family, do you know the truth?" I said. And in that moment, everything fell apart. My family was forced to face the truth. The books targeted them like weapons. Slowly, one by one, the secrets spilled out. Lies, deceptions, greed. The games they had played with me were all coming to light now. And all I had ever wanted was the truth. The envelope my grandmother had left me somehow delivered the final blow. Everything was revealed. The will she had written years ago had determined it all. My family had ignored every step that pointed me toward the truth. But now they had no choice but to face the consequences. And I was finally free. I had taken my revenge. Now I could step into a true beginning.